were in a foreign country with a guy super connected with the government down there. Lots of corruption going on throughout the government. And of course, this was a drug lord. It's 8-foot swells. From the bottom of where our boat is, we can barely see anything because of water. So he goes around the other side of the bay. As we pull around the other side of the island, there's a warship that's docked in the middle of this bay, a military ship that's parked there. We were more and more convinced that our lives were in danger. Welcome to another episode of Liberating Humanity. This one's going to be fun. This is a crazy story. And if you want to validate it, you can call my old partner, John Pennington. He was there. This was awesome. It's not really about any rescues, but it was my first time in some of these deep jungles in these deep areas of Latin America on a quest for gold. Okay, this is funny. So John and I started many years ago, with a company that did bridge loans. It was called Bridge Loan Capital. And we were offering bridge loans to guys who were doing everything from buying land and doing a development on it to somebody who had a big shipment of products that they were buying out of Asia. Let's say that you had a widget that you were selling to Best Buy and you needed to pay the money in advance to the manufacturer that maybe was over in Asia. Well, the banks will pay for factoring, which means after you've delivered it to the store, but the banks wouldn't do what we call purchase order financing, meaning you've got a purchase order, you've got a store that's ready to buy your widgets that you're manufacturing, but you need to pay the factory in advance. And so we set up a company that enabled people to do that. We charged a lot of money per month because it was a high-risk deal, but we were in the business of lending money. We even had some guys that said, hey, we want to borrow some money to buy a private jet. And so we looked at the jet, we were analyzing. We ended up not loaning the money on the jet, but we did many, many millions. In fact, by the time we started the company Bridge Investment Group, we had in Bridge Loan Capital, we had over $100 million worth of loans that were out on some different properties and things like that. So we were doing pretty well. In the early days, though, this is before we started a fund. All we were doing, we were using some of my money. We were making phone calls to some private investors and seeing if they wanted to invest with us. That's the world that we were in. And we got a phone call from somebody who said, hey, I need to borrow $250,000 to buy a boat, an expedition ship boat. And we're like, okay, yeah, what's this for? What's all? I mean, we were looking at lending on jets and everything else. And John had known this guy from the past, so we had a little bit of credibility. He said, my company has some historians. It has some, Navy SEAL guys that work with us and divers that we identify shipwrecks that have happened somewhere in the last 500 years, and we find ones that had a big payload. Maybe they had a lot of gold, a lot of silver, and they sunk. And so we identify where they sunk, or at least a general idea of where it is. They had some sonar equipment that were finding where these things were, and then they would send down divers and try to pull these things up. He'd done a bunch of stuff in the Caribbean and some other areas. And he said, my primary boats that I've used got hit by the hurricane in Katrina. And he said, we're right in the middle of some things. We've identified what we believe is Sir Francis Drake's treasure dump. Now, if you open up your history books and you read about Sir Francis Drake, he was somewhere in the 1500s. He was here in Americas, and he was pillaging the gold and silver that was here in the Americas and taking it back to Europe. And at one point, historically, this was his very last trip here to the Americas. He had a ship that was completely full of gold and silver, like tons and tons and tons of gold and silver. And he was being chased by the Spaniards. I guess they were mad that he had taken some of it or whatever else, and he knew he couldn't outrun them. And so reportedly, he found a place, an island off the coast of somewhere in South America, that he reportedly dumped over 50 tons of gold and silver overboard. and with the hopes that he would come back. But he had to dump him overboard in a place that he could come back to later so that he could be light enough that he could outrun the Spaniards that were chasing him. Well, evidently, he goes back to Europe with what he ended up keeping on the ship and never returned to the Americas to pick up that treasure. So this could be massive. I mean, I don't know how much gold, how much silver, but either way, this is billions of dollars in today's dollars, 50 tons of gold and silver. And so he said, we believe that we found the Sir Francis Drake treasure dump. He said, we had our sonar equipment, we've been studying some different areas, and we found a bar. And on this silver bar was stamped with the Sir Francis Drake stamp. He said, we believe there is so much more here. In fact, all of our sonar stuff said that this whole area is completely filled with something under there. We need to have this ship so we can go pull it up. And we're like, okay, that's kind of cool. But it seems a little bit risky for what we were trying to do with our investors' money. And plus, we didn't really even have a fund yet. So we're like, I don't know. I'm not going to put my money in that. But so there was one of our investors. He had enough money he could lose $250,000 in his couch and not miss it. And so I called him up, and he's an avid diver as well. And I told him about the story. And he said, Paul, I don't know this guy, and seems a little bit risky. He said, but I trust you, and I trust John. He said, so here's the deal. You guys fly down there to South America, and if you put your hands on that bar, if you see that it is real, and you come back and you tell me, yeah, this is real. I saw this bar. I saw the Sir Francis Drake stamp. He said, not only will I fund the mission and pay for the ship and everything else, he said, I will come down with you and I'll go diving for it as well. So he said, so you guys just fly down there, and if it's real, it's real. So John and I are like, okay, this sounds kind of crazy, but why not? We have a little bit of time right now. Let's go down there. So we buy our plane tickets. We fly down to South America. I'm not going to tell you what country it's in because all y'all are going to try to go down there and find some other stuff. But so John and I jump on a plane and we fly down there. And as we land in this country, we're met at the airport by the guy that was wanting to borrow the money. And he was pretty distraught. He said, hey guys, I am so glad that you came down. He said, I just got a phone call. My wife is in the hospital, some kidney stuff going on. He said, I don't know how serious it is. I'm hoping that it's not serious at all. He said, but I have to be on the next flight out of here. I have to get home to my wife. He said, so here's the thing. And he had told us the name of this island and where it was. He said, the problem is, he said, I don't have the authorization from the government down here to do the reclamation. He said, all the other countries we've worked in, we have a deal. Whatever we pull up, they have a government agent there. And after they hold it for a certain period of time, just to make sure that it doesn't have any significant historical value pertaining to the country itself, he said, then they clean it all. And he said, the country keeps half and we keep half of everything that we get. He said, here in this country, we don't have that yet, and we don't know when we're going to get it. He said, I'm hoping that we can get in the door with these guys. He said, since we've been down here, I've met a couple people that I think have some connections. He said, I'm going to have you guys stay with this guy that, he said, I don't know him very well. Don't tell him where the treasure is. He said, but he's going to take care of you. This guy is super connected with a whole bunch of government officials. And I believe if he pulls some of the strings that he has, we can get the authorization from the government that we need so that we can go in and do this reclamation of this treasure. We're like, okay, good. I hope everything's good with your wife. And so we go, and these big bodyguard guys, they get us and they put us in this car, and then they take us to meet this super connected guy that's connected with the government down there. And we pull in, we're going through this pretty shady area of town, and there's a lot of poverty going on in a lot of areas. There's drug dealers, and it's a rough neighborhood. And then we pull around this corner, and there's this huge fence, barbed wire all around the outside of this fence on top of it. And he pulls in, and there's these guards out front with full automatic weapons that are in front of this gate. They open the gate for us, and then we come in, and they're out there with these automatic weapons. And we're like, wow, this guy is super important. I mean, he's obviously got a whole bunch of money. This is beautiful mansion right there in the middle of this slum, and he's got solid protection with the barbed wire gate and with the guys with the guns and everything else. So we pull in, and they take us upstairs, and they introduce us to the owner of the house. This guy is man in charge. He's got nice clothes, nice watch, and he's loaded, loaded. He invites us in, gives us a drink, says, "Hey, so sorry to hear about your friend. I'm going to talk with some of my government connections, see if we can get the approval that you guys need to be able to pull up this treasure." He said, "Meanwhile, just have a drink and whatever." And we're sitting there talking, and he starts pressuring us. He said, "Hey guys, I've got some boats right now, and we can go out and find this treasure. Do you guys know where it is?" And we remembering what our original contact said, that we said, "No, yeah, we're not quite sure where that is." He goes, "Well, we can go out right now looking for treasure right now." And he opened up this case, and he had all these coins and stuff. He says, "See, I've been collecting these coins. I've got gold coins from the 1500s and the 1400s and all of this stuff that he had." He said, "I've got guys that can take you out." We're like, yeah, well, we would like to wait and at least until our friend lands and figure out what we need to do next. But we're here, but yeah, I don't know if we want to go out right now. And so we waited around. We're sitting there talking, and then he said, "Hold on, I've got to go." And he goes downstairs, and we have these big, huge, beautiful windows that are overlooking the city. He goes downstairs, and we see this black government vehicle coming in past the guys with the armed guards, and he comes into this garage area, and he's down there talking to these guys, and they're obviously government officials. And we could sense what was going on. They went into this garage area, but they were doing some transactions back in there. This happened a couple different times. And John quietly turns to me and he said, "Paul, this guy's a drug lord. He's a big time drug lord." And there was a number of other people that came in that got some packages and stuff and going out. And the energy, it was very obvious how he handled himself, his guards. This was flat out cartel drug lord in a big, big way. And unfortunately, that's why he had connections with the government officials down there, is that they were as corrupt in many cases as he was. And so they were coming in, he was paying them off for some things, some extra cash going back and forth. And we're like, "Oh, this is super uncomfortable." And then he comes back up, and he came back out, and he had a gun on him now this time. And with the gun, he now increased his level of aggression with us. He said, "Hey guys, just I think we need to go out right now. I think you should tell me where your friend said that the treasure was, because we're ready to go out right now. Let's go. Let's go." And we're like, yeah, we really don't know where it is." He said, "No, let's go out. There's some other places that we could go to." He said, "How about I just take you out on my boat right now? I can take you out right now, and we can go out looking around, and I can show you some of the other dive places that we've been, that we found some treasure before." Every single second that he spoke, and the longer that we were there, we were more and more convinced that our lives were in danger. We were in a foreign country with a guy super connected with the government down there, lots of corruption going on throughout the government. And of course, this was very obviously a drug lord. And we said, "Hey, we don't want to wear out our welcome here with you. We'd like to, go get a hotel." He goes, "No, you're staying here. You're staying here. I've got plenty of rooms here. You guys will stay here." Back and forth, talking over the next half hour, we finally convinced him that we would feel much more comfortable in a hotel, not, being there, overstepping our bounds here at his house, because we needed to get out. And we were pretty stuck with his guards there and everything else. So he finally agreed that he would take us out. And we got in with his guards into the car, and they took us to a hotel closer to town. We took our bags out and put them in the hotel, and we started looking around in the beach area, and we're like, "How do we get out of here?" So we pretended like we were checking in the hotel, but we went to a little restaurant, some other things, and then went out and grabbed our bags and went out the back way and grabbed a taxi. And we went to the airport, immediately booking our flights at the airport. We get to the airport, his guards are there, and they're like, "Hey, where are you guys going? What's going on?" We said, "Oh, we're sorry, we got a call from our friend. He's going to be gone longer than we thought. We'll come back when he's here." And so we were already there at the airport. And so they're like, "Okay, what flight you on?" We told them. They sat there and watched us until we went through the security and we're on the plane. So I'm through security, and I called the guy who was originally agreeing to fund it. And I said, "Bro," I said, "here's what happened. This guy's for sure a drug lord. We don't have permission from the government yet to pull this thing up. And our guy had to go back because of his sick wife. That we've got to fly home." And he said, "Guys, it's taken you a whole day just to get down there." He said, "You know where the treasure is, right?" We said, Yeah, he told us where it was." He said, all right, why don't you go? You don't even need that guy. Just get a rent-a-car and go. He said, wait until your plane takes off. So these guys think that you're gone. They think that you've flown out of the country, and then go get a rent-a-car and go find it. We're like, hey, that works. Okay. So we did. We waited until the plane took off and waited a little bit while longer so we could feel comfortable that his guards were all gone. We went out, we found a rent-a-car place, kind of a little cheap one that was there. We didn't want to, be seen with walking around too much. And we get in this car, and this rent-a-car was a piece of crap. I mean, we're talking holes in the floor that you could, on an angle, you could see the road going by, right? I mean, this was a piece of junk. And we start driving because we had to go, we were looking on a map to try to find out the closest city to where this island was. It's about a 3-hour drive, 4-hour drive to get to the city so that we could get a boat and go over to the island. And as we're driving, we're hitting these huge potholes, boom, 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 with this car that was barely holding together already, and hitting these big old potholes and everything. And then we get stopped by a local police officer. He's like, you guys have a permit to be driving through this region? We're like, I didn't know you needed a permit in this region. Yeah, you need a permit in this region. And we're going to have to detain you because you don't have a permit. And it was very obvious. He just wanted money. That's all that it was. There was the corruption everywhere in the government down here. How much is this pass, this certificate to go through your region here? He goes, it's $20. Fine, $20. This happened over and over again. The corruption was rampant, and we had to just keep on paying these guys off. We finally get to this. We're running out of gas. We get to this gas station. We put the gas thing in. We go inside to go get some food, and we come back out, and there is gasoline everywhere underneath the car. We're like, crap, we pull out the gas thing, and I'm thinking, you know what? We hit so many potholes. There's probably a big old hole somewhere in the middle and the bottom of the gas tank. And we realized, though, that gas filler things down there just didn't have an automatic off switch. So it literally overfilled and was just pouring out all over. We get down to this little town, and this town we're talking dirt roads everywhere. This is the closest town that we could find to where this island was. And dirt roads everywhere, thinking, crap, I hope that they even have a dive shop here or anywhere we can get some dive equipment or get a little boat. And I mean, there's pigs and donkeys walking through the middle of the roads in this town, and there's no lights on anywhere, no lights at all. We pull around the corner and we find this dive site. There's a dive shop. And so we go in there, and I've got my broken Spanish, and there was fortunately a gringo there that spoke Spanish and English, could help us translate. And we told him, look, we really want to go like today, if possible. We'd like to go out to this island and go scuba diving like today. And we had left a message. We had called our friend that had flown back to see his wife, and we said, look, here's what happened. This guy's a drug lord. This guy is dirty. And don't trust him. Don't tell him anything. And the reason why he's so connected with the government is the government's dirty too. These guys were doing cash deals with him all day long in there, and we were getting stopped every 20 miles by a local cop that was asking us for money. It was rampant, the corruption that was going on in the country. And later, in doing rescue work and stuff, we realized that that's the reason there was so much trafficking going on in this part of Latin America, was there was just a lot of corruption. So it's super sad because that corruption flowed down and eventually even affected the children. So we had left him this message. He, of course, hadn't landed yet, but we told him, hey, we're going to go where you said that island was. You said that there was this big bay and this old broken down hotel that was on the other side. We're going to go and we're going to look for it. But we just left him that in messages. So we're in this town. We find this dive shop, and this gringo is helping us translate. And we tell him, hey, we need to go out there like today if possible. He's like, well, the ocean's kind of rough today, but and we said, yeah, we want to go out today. I mean, because really that's the only reason we were there. Plus there was no hotels in this little teeny town. If we were going to sleep somewhere, it was a 2-hour drive away from where we were. So we're like, we'd like to just go diving today. He said, the problem is we don't have air in any of the tanks. He said, my compressor is here, but he said the power has been out in this town for the last 2 weeks. I can't run my compressor. We're like, crap. How do we get out to this island? We're thinking, he said, but, maybe if we use your car battery and this other old car over here and these two batteries, we're like, hey, that works. So we hooked up our couple car batteries to this compressor, and sure enough, we ended up putting the air in the tanks. And we got 2 tanks each. We put them in this little boat, and we start going out. Now, it is rough seas. It's 8-foot swells. From the bottom of where our boat is, we can barely see anything because the water on both sides of these swells. And then boom, we're up high and we can see the land on everything else. And this island was pretty far out there. You couldn't even see the island from the mainland. And we're going out on these big, huge waves. And John's like, wow, this is probably more dangerous than the drug lord's house that we were just in. I said, yeah, this is super, because I'm these big swells. We didn't have any life jackets at all. And this little teeny boat, it was so small that I could literally grab both sides of the boat sitting in the middle with my hands. And we're 8-foot swells, right? And so we're going out there, and then all of a sudden in the middle, we can't see the land. Even in the top of the swell as we're going up, we couldn't see the land anymore from the shore, and we couldn't see the island. We're literally in the middle of the ocean, 8-foot swells in this little tiny boat, no life jackets. I put the BCD on, the dive thing, that I put a little bit of air in it, and so did John. We're like, this is kind of dangerous. We need to put these on. So that was our life jackets, as our dive vests. And then all of a sudden, boom, we couldn't see anything out there, and the boat dies. We're like, oh crap. Now what do we do? He goes, oh, está bien. And he opens up this floorboard, and there's a gas can in there. And there's actually a couple of different gas cans. There's 4 gas cans in there. And he pulls the tube out of one of the gas cans that was now empty and sticks it in the other one, which I guess that was his tank, right? And boom, pulls it a few times and starts it and keeps on going out to this island. And he pulls around one side of the island, and he says this in his broken English and my broken Spanish. He basically told us this is where we go diving. We said, no. We want to go around the other side. There's a big bay there. There's this old dilapidated hotel there. That's where we want to go. He said, no, we don't go there. There's no diving there. It's not very good diving. It's only good diving here. There's just good fish here. And we're like, no, that's where we want to go. We need to be in that bay, because that's where we were told that there was the treasure trove. So he goes around the other side of the bay. And as we pull around the other side of the island, this big bay, it's probably the size of 2-3 football fields, this big bay. There's a warship that's docked in the middle of this bay. We're talking like 200-300 foot military ship that's parked there. And me and John are like, I don't know what's going on. And this guy's like, oh, that's strange. I said, what are they doing here? He goes, I don't know. Maybe they're checking for fishing licenses. Really? 300-foot warship just sitting there. We're like, okay. There's a lot of eyes on that ship that are watching us, get out. So we positioned the boat in a way where the back of it was away from the ship. And we put our dive stuff on, and we slowly pushed out our metal detectors that we had got. And we pushed these metal detectors out and into the water, and we go down. And now we don't know. I mean, this bay is huge. It's like a couple football fields, right? 2-3 football fields. And we're down there. We're just kind of diving around on the bottom with our metal detector, because that's really all we had to work with. And we're finding it has a little thing where it goes beep, little 1 through 10 beep. And there's little 1s and 2s. Beep, beep, little tiny things. And we're digging down in the sand. We find an old pop can, or, a piece of a chain or whatever. All this just crap. And we ran through our first tank. And we go back up, we switch back out again, get our second take in, and we go down, and we're going all around a little teeny ones. Beep, beep, just little crap all over the place. We're like, oh man, this place is way too big. This couple of football fields, this whole bay is way too big for us to even find wherever it was. This would take us days to figure this out. So we finally ran out of air on both of our tanks, and we get back in the boat, and we go back to shore. Go back to the mainland, and it's 8-foot waves again. Boo, up and down, and we left enough air in our BCD to keep us somewhat safe. Of course, the boat runs out of gas again halfway back. He pulls open the hatch, puts a little thing in, pulls it onto the other gas tank, and we keep on going. So we finally get back to the shore. We're like, okay, that was kind of a waste of a day, but it was fun scuba diving trip, big old military ship there. I don't know what that was about, but okay. So we didn't have any cell phone signal there. We needed a place to sleep that night. It was getting late. So we start driving up to the closest bigger city. And as soon as we got cell phone signal, I found that I had a couple missed calls from the original guy that wanted to borrow the money, that had found the treasure. And he says, hey, call me. So we give him a call, and he said, did you go down there? We said, yeah, but this bay is too big. There's the little 1s and 2s. He goes, oh, no, you're in the wrong place. He said, and he explained, he said, there's a side thing over on the side. There's a cave on one side, and there's a couple jetties that are coming out. And he said, that's where it was. And we're thinking, well, that would make sense. He wouldn't just dump it in the middle of the bay, right? He would have a couple markers that are on the land. So he would know where to come back. He would know where the jetties are. He would know all of this stuff so that he could come back later and find it. And I explained to him, I said, we have the problem with the government anyway. These guys are corrupt. Everywhere is corrupt here. So I don't know if you're ever going to get the license to be able to dive here and be able to share with them. And he said, I did find a good government contact that I could trust. He said, I called him and I let him know that you guys were going to be in. I didn't tell him anything about the treasure, but I told him that where you guys were going to be. And he said that he was going to send some security out just to make sure you guys were safe. We're like, security? That warship? That was our security, right? You sent that? And he said, yeah, that was there just to make sure that, nothing bad happened because I got your voicemail message about the drug lord and everything else. And I just want to make sure you guys were good. We're like, okay, that's great, but I don't trust the government here as much as I don't trust the drug lord here. And so it's probably a good idea for you to not tell them that we're still here and to just let them leave. He goes, okay, I'll let them know. He said, but you've got to go look on this other place because it's not in that big bay area. It's over on this other edge. That's just kind of how you know that you're in the right region. We're like, oh, crap. Okay, so we had driven a couple hours to get to the nearest hotel. We slept there that night, get up the next morning, drive all the way back down to this little town. And we talked to the dive master, right? Really, the guy with a little teeny boat with some dive equipment. And we get in the boat. This day, it wasn't 8-foot swells. That was so much nicer getting out there because we were almost ready to throw up the first day, right? So we go out to this island again. We tell them, yeah, we want to go back around the other side. We had filled up the tanks again with our little batteries, right? And we get around the other side and we identify the markers and we're like, okay, that's where we want to dive, right over there. And we want to go pretty close to shore, we told him. We said, okay. So we go in and he docks the boat and we dive off and we have our metal detector. All of a sudden I turn it on and boom, not little ones and twos. We're talking straight 10, whee, all the way to the top. I'm like, wow. There's something big underneath here. And it kept on beeping that big. In this area is probably 100 feet in diameter, this whole big area that we were getting straight 10s on our metal detector. We're like, wow, there's something big down here in this area. So we take the metal detector up, we grab a little shovel thing that we had brought with us, and we go down, and I'm like shoveling, and every time I shovel, because we're only about 20 feet from the shore, 20, 30 feet from the shore, we're not that deep. And so the waves were coming in each time, and it was so difficult to shovel, and I would bounce up every time. I'd put my foot in the sand, and it would push me up, and we ran out, John and I together ran out of air on our first tanks, just trying to figure out how to get down to it. So we went back up and I'm like, okay, we've got to figure out how to keep us down there. So I found all of the weights, all the extra ones I could. I put this massive weight belt on. So this is somewhat dangerous, right? But, enough where it would just drop me like a rock. And so I get back in, put my diving stuff back on, and boom, take out the air out of my BCD and boom, right to the bottom. And now it was holding me on the bottom. My feet were solid and I could feel the weight. And start digging. And I would dig and push the sand aside, and then the waves were coming back in, and the waves were coming in, and would pushing the sand. Literally, after John and I completely exhausted both of our second tanks, we only had a hole that was roughly 2, maybe 3 feet deep, if that, and about 6-8 feet wide, because we were trying to dig and the sand would keep coming in. And we realized that, this stuff was dumped somewhere in the 1500s. So there was roughly somewhere between 6 and 8 feet of sand that was on top of it. There was no way we were going to get down to it with a shovel. All we could hope for is that we could find that bar that he originally had, unless he already took it. He didn't even tell us. So we're thinking, okay, there's obviously something really big here, but there's no way we're going to get to it with a shovel. And we ran out of our air. We get back up. We take the boat back to the mainland, knowing that there's something there, but also knowing that, number one, if we brought something up, we couldn't get it home anyway. What, are you going to bring a big gold bar through customs with you? Where'd that come from? Well, I found it out in the ocean, really. So if you don't have the permission from the government, you have a problem. And there was a lot of civil unrest going on at the time. There was a transition within the government. People were fighting. And we knew that there wasn't a very high chance that we were going to get the cooperation of a government that we could trust any more than we could trust the original drug lord. And so we're like, okay, yeah, we called the guy. We said, hey, this is an issue here. We did see what we found with our metal detector, a place that we think that it was. But, what do we do now? We can't get to it with a shovel. We've got to have a boat that has a big sucker thing. It sucks up the sand and gets able to get down to the gold. And so we went back to the main city where the airport was, and we flew out. We came back to the U.S., but we landed in Florida. And when we were there in Florida, we had a 24-hour layover. It was a long friggin' lay. I guess that was, we were pretty cheap on our tickets. We didn't want to find expensive ones that flew us straight there. So we had a 24-hour layover. And so we decided to get a hotel. And this hotel had a hot tub, beautiful outdoor area. And we thought, okay, let's go chill for a while. So we put our swimsuits on, we get down in the hot tub. And we're sitting there in this hot tub and just talking, just me and John. And at the time, our business was just calling guys with money and telling them about a deal, and calling guys with money and telling them about a deal, and just kind of staying in the middle, just kind of be like brokers. And John said, Paul, I believe that we can build this into something real, like sustainable, something big. And he started explaining what a fund was, what an investment fund was. He said, we don't just find guys and do individual deals, but we register with the Securities Exchange Commission. We have to put all this paperwork together. We have some legal firms that come in and make sure that we're doing all this right. He said, I'm willing to put all of the work into the paperwork and making sure we're all secure. He said, you're really good. You're really good at raising money. You're really good at calling these guys that have the money and putting them into deals and stuff. He said, so your role would change. Instead of just individual deals, it would change to promoting a fund itself. And he said, I believe we can do this. And we laid this out. We were literally there for a few hours laying this all out. And we get on the elevator, and John says, this is why I knew Paul was the right partner in the beginning. We get on we're literally dripping wet with our swimsuits, and we get on this elevator, and there's these three guys that get on with suits, and we're just going up to the third floor. By the time we got to the third floor, I had business cards from all three of them, and they were all super excited about learning more about our new investment fund, right? Here's the thing. Did we find the gold? No. Do I know where it is? Yes. Am I going back? Yes. This is why I didn't tell you the country, even the site of the where the ocean, anything. You don't have any of those details. However, just like back in the time that we had called alchemists, the alchemists were trying to find out a way to create gold using just alchemy, just using chemicals and whatever else to create gold. They didn't create gold. What they did do is through this process of visualizing and thinking that they were creating gold, they created a whole bunch of different medical advancements, things that created value in our world far beyond what that gold would have. If John and I had found gold that was there, number one, there's a good chance that the government would have taken it at the time, and there's still been a whole bunch of corruption. Number two, we wouldn't have made a whole bunch on it. Only thing that we would have made is money from the landing deal. Maybe we could have had a part of it, et cetera, in the future. But what's serendipitous about this is the fact that we on this trip, in wanting to find this 50 tons of gold and silver, this was the beginning of what ended up being a multi-billion-dollar investment fund that set John and I up for life financially in everything that we decided to create and do. And the beginning of it happened to be on that trip. So sorry if it wasn't the best ending. We didn't end up with 50 tons of gold and silver. It's still there. That's the good part about this. And we're going to put together a team once the government is such where we can feel comfortable being in this region. But the amazing thing about it is the billions and billions of dollars that came out of that original meeting that we had together, the thousands of lives that have been changed, the employees that we have. There were so many employees that right there in the beginning were just as broke as we were, more broke. What's super exciting is the massive amount of wealth and abundance that was created that started right there on our quest for treasure, right, in Latin America. So anyway, this has been a little bit of a shorter podcast, but this was fun. It was fun just sharing with you where a lot of that started. Here's what's super exciting about that is that was my first trip to the jungles of South America. And I went back countless times on rescue missions throughout all of Latin America. We went on a bunch of different rescue missions there. And the money that helped to fund the original foundation, my money that came in, my connections that funded a lot of those rescue missions, because it wasn't just my money that came in, but a lot of it was the fact that I had run a super successful investment fund, and I knew all these ultra wealthy investors that were also ultra wealthy donors. And that money that came in because of the creation of that fund rescued thousands of victims over all the foundations that we had helped to start, that we had helped to fund. All of them together, thousands of victims are now free from the bondage, home with their families. Massive abundance was created, and it all started right there on this little treasure hunt. This has been the Liberating Humanity podcast. My name is Paul Hutchinson. This was fun sharing this story with you. John has detailed writing of everything that happened there. I'm just doing it all from memory. This was 10 years ago, so hopefully I got it all right, John, but I'm pretty sure I got all of the important facts all the way through. So super fun sharing this story with you. If you like this, please like and share it with other people. My name is Paul Hutchinson. This is Liberating Humanity. Thank you.